if younger voters are giving the middle finger to Democrats and are going like, I'm not for the Republicans, but I don't trust you guys to to take up my issues or fight for what I believe in. I think it will hinder our ability to have a wave election. And part of it is, and this is where I get in trouble, part of it is this bullshit idea that the issues of so many of these younger voters are distractions, right? Right. You're LGBTQ, right? You're a distraction. You are criminal justice reform and feel strongly about it and tired of the cops kicking your ass. You're a distraction. I think that is so disrespectful to so many people who've been voting our way, that we've got dignity, right? We can't tell voters who've been our base that them and their issues are distractions. And what we really have to focus on is something else.
Yeah, I thought the third way polling was a good example of that, where they had this memo that was widely criticized because it was saying, here's the words that Democrats should avoid. And I think it's so important that there's a difference between avoiding certain language and erasing what people care about. And I have to give you credit because you're, I think, the only person who's also said something, which is the election in 2024, it was not about the price of eggs.
The other issue is, a lot of voters don't see themselves in terms of identity the same way. More an example of culture to me, cultural differences than policy differences.
Well, look, I'm too old and cranky to be polite these days, and we can call it cultural differences.
Mm-hmm.
But look, we had an election where, right, I think and you see it right now where, and I'm part of it, right? The mainstream media and the legacy media and networks, where, my God, if you have a conversation about race, you get in trouble quick, and the administration is at one point, at the same time, they are pushing things like, if it's CRT or DEI, like DEI is now the cause of plane crashes, is now putting people's lives in danger, right? But we know what that is. That is just a continuum of the Southern strategy, right? The most successful strategy in America. And I wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post after 2020 that the Southern strategy isn't dead, but I think it's dying. God damn, I was wrong. It's not. When you look, they're eating our cats and they're eating our dogs. It's not an economics argument, at least not in the way that we're thinking about it. It is a tribal argument. And tribalism still, whether it's still a driver. Like, what was his economic policy? What was his 5-point education plan? We don't know. They're eating our cats and dogs.
Well, the eggs are more expensive now than they were then.